There's no way this little $100 mini PC can game, right? For $100, this is possible? And it's not just emulators. New games like Hollow Knight Silksong running at 1080p, keeping a steady 40 frames per second is pretty good. Turns out it can. Honestly, I'm having a hard time making this video because I spend the whole time playing the damn games. Alright, enough of that. Let me show you how I turned this little PC into a Linux gaming console with CachyOS's handheld Linux gaming distribution. Projects like the RetroPie have been around for a while now, turning Raspberry Pis, affordable, low-power computers, into emulation stations for older games. But the day of the Raspberry Pi being the best bang for your buck affordable PC are long over. These N100 mini PCs are usually about the same price as a Raspberry Pi 5 with 4 to 6 times the GPU power. These mini PCs have become an absolute phenomenon in the home labbing community because their integrated GPU is powerful enough to host Jellyfin and Plex servers, which means decoding 1080p and sometimes even 4K video and sending it over to your Apple TV or whatever the heck you use to stream from your home lab. That means there's a lot of graphics power in here, for the price and for the power efficiency. And so my question was, could we use that power for gaming instead, to run more demanding titles than things that ran on the Amiga or the NES? The answer is yes. To make things more interesting, SteamOS and Steam Big Picture Mode have made Linux gaming in the console-like fashion a thing? But we've been waiting for a full SteamOS release for a long time, and the Linux community I wouldn't call particularly patient, in the most endearing kind of way. And so there have been a lot of Linux distributions designed to emulate that SteamOS gaming interface. I'm going to be making use of CachyOS's handheld gaming distribution to turn this into a Linux gaming console, and it is shocking how good it is. Let's talk a little bit more about hardware. So what I've got here is my chewy N100 mini PC. There's a lot like these. So here I am on Amazon.com. We can get this price down from about $150 to closer to $100 on sale. And what you're getting out of that is kind of incredible. You're getting these N100 mini PCs, which are x86 processors, not ARM, which tends to be, a little easier, more compatible, all of that stuff. You're getting 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, 512 gigabyte SSD, which is amazing for actually storing your games on an NVMe SSD, so you're getting really fast load times, and a bunch of other nice things. A lot of these come with 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connections, all that kind of cool stuff. Similarly, the Raspberry Pi 5 starter kits are around the same price and sometimes more expensive. The kicker about this is the Pi 5 and the N100 have very similar CPU benchmarks, but again, we're talking about ARM versus x86, and when it comes to gaming, x86 is still king. You're getting faster storage, which is great for loading your games, but look at these GPU benchmarks. The Pi 5 is scoring 307 on GLMark 2, whereas the N100 is scoring 2000. We're talking 4 to 6 times the gaming power here. When it comes to Linux distributions, I would love to just be able to install SteamOS on a thing and go. But SteamOS isn't in that state yet. It's really just for the Steam Deck right now. In the meantime, there have been some really amazing Linux distributions that replicate the SteamOS experience on a greater variety and diversity of devices. The two favorites that I was looking at were Bazite, which I think is Fedora-based, and CachyOS. CachyOS is a favorite of a lot of people these days, and it does more than just gaming, but CachyOS's handheld mode is that SteamOS competitor that we're looking for. Now, between CachyOS and Bazite, it's a tough choice. I think Bazite's a little harder to break, but CachyOS really has a lot of kernel level optimizations and package level optimizations that squeeze out as much performance as possible out of any hardware you throw at it, but it's extra important when we're talking about something with so little hardware to spare as it is. So I'll be going with CachyOS primarily for its performance optimizations. Now, I want to be clear about our goals for this project. There are two things. One, we need to accept that even though we're getting 4 to 6 times the Raspberry Pi's GPU performance, that's 4 to 6 times not a lot, okay? So we're looking at indie titles and emulating GameCube, that kind of thing. We're not talking about running Red Dead Redemption 2 or whatever AAA title is really cool right now. That's long out of the reach of this little guy. The other thing we're looking for is that perfect console-like experience, the kind of thing where you can navigate perfectly with a controller from your couch without having to worry about Linux configuration and having a keyboard with you. I just want this thing to go. So we're going to be rating this console at the end on its couchability. Can I run it exclusively with a controller without too much configuration? And what's its performance like within reason? So without further ado, let's take a look at the configuration of this thing and then get into some gaming. So I've got the CachyOS Handheld Linux ISO on this guy. I've already got the installation process done, and we're just gonna boot right into it. If you want a full tutorial on all of that kind of stuff, you can check out my Linux Mint installation tutorial, or comment down below if you'd like to see exactly step-by-step how I configured this little machine. If I get enough comments about it, I'll do a full video tutorial on exactly how I did this. Once you've got CachyOS Handheld installed, just like a Steam Deck, it'll boot straight into essentially Steam Big Picture mode, which is navigable just like a console is. It does take a little bit of configuration to get a controller working, but not a lot. We can jump over to the Steam menu, hit Settings, and that'll bring us this. We can then pick Bluetooth. You can see I've already got my Pro controller sort of configured, so I'm just gonna get it to connect, and in a couple of seconds, we're doing the damn thing. I've been a PC gamer all my life, and while I love PC gaming, I've always envied the comfort of gaming from your couch. With Steam Big Picture mode and SteamOS and all of its derivatives in both concept and actual technicalities, finally you can do PC gaming from the couch like this, and it's a joy. One of the coolest parts about these setups is that you can get emulator games launching from Steam. So you don't need like another launcher or anything like that. If you want to use something like Emulation Station DE, that's cool, but I personally prefer to just have everything in one interface. So to get that working, we need EmuDeck. Let me show you how that works. EmuDeck is fairly easy to install, and I'm not going to go through all of that process in this video. We're mostly just showcasing here. Again, if you want full tutorials, let me know in the comments below and I can follow up this video. But basically, EmuDeck is designed to make running a ton of different emulators really easy on the Steam Deck. Luckily, the people who run EmuDeck are awesome and didn't just design it for SteamOS, they also did it for Linux, Chimera OS, and even Windows, which is, I'm shocked that works. So the installation process is pretty easy. You click Linux, you click download for free, that gives you a script, you run the script, and then you go through their GUI installer. There are lots of tutorials on how to go through this on YouTube already, so I'll leave one in the description below. It's baffling to me how easy the EmuDeck people have made emulation in this comfortable console-like way. It's amazing. Finally, we can get to the fun part, which is benchmarking some games. So let's start. Something that I think is really gonna sing on a machine like this are indie titles, 2D platformers, Metroidvania games, that kind of thing. And so we'll be testing things out with Hollow Knight Silksong, which I know I'm super excited to play. Hades, because I don't think Hades 2 is out yet. I don't have it, but I'm assuming Hades 1 and Hades 2 are going to perform similarly. So these kinds of games, and then of course your Stardew Valleys, that kind of stuff, I think we're going to be able to get 40 to 60 frames per second at 720p to 1080p, which is way more than playable. It's within that Steam Deck level of performance. So let's take a look. So let's take a look at Hollow Knight Silksong. It loads up pretty freaking quick, all things considered. The device is running an NVMe SSD, right? So we've got 512 gigabytes of really fast storage. And so our games load up pretty quick. We've got Mango HUD up in the top left corner, so you can kind of track our performance. But the GPU and the CPU do get slammed, I will admit, but that's fine. This thing already doesn't take up a lot of power. So if its GPU and CPU are under load, oh no, it's not soaking up a lot of electricity here. So as you can see, let's just take a quick look through settings. We're running at 1080p, 60 hertz. We've got VSync, we're in full screen, and our particle effects and stuff like that, we're running at like not just low settings. So if we lower the blur quality and lower the particle effects, we might get a couple extra frames here. We're pushing more into the mid 40 frames per second. It's a little bit more playable this way. And if you're okay with dropping the resolution in favor of some frame rate, we can go down to 720p and we can lock this sucker in at 60 frames per second, which is really quite nice. Okay, it's hard to play games and talk at the same time. Jumping over to something like Hades, which is I would imagine a little bit more demanding than Silksong. I haven't played Hades in a while, but Hades 2 is coming out, and I think this thing will be able to handle it at 720p 60 frames per second, which would be sweet. So here we are. Let's just open up settings. Oh, it's under display. So if we open up settings, we're running at 720p as well, but we can jump it all the way up to 1080p just to see what'll happen. And we're getting 45 frames per second without a lot of enemies on screen. Not bad, certainly playable. And here you can see at 1080p, even with some bad guys on screen. Sorry, I haven't played in forever, so I suck. We're still getting a steady 45 frames per second. And again, if we're willing to drop the resolution a touch, we're getting steadily 60 frames per second, something, comparable to the Steam Deck at this point, which does run most games at 720p. So I'm really impressed with the indie gaming performance that this thing's got. So the second thing that I think this little PC is going to be able to really shine with is older emulated titles. But where the Raspberry Pi 4 and even the Raspberry Pi 5 are limited to much older generation consoles, I think this is going to be able to play GameCube and Wii emulators at 60 frames per second. That's my prediction, and I think I'm right. So let's find out. Let's kick things off with one of the most beloved games of all time, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Let's see how it goes. If this works, I'm going to be a very happy camper. All right, let's load this up and see what happens. Press start. Yeah. So we've got Smash Bros. Melee running at 60 frames per second, 1080p. I may not be a pro Smash player. In fact, I may suck. But what I am is a guy who's got 60 frames per second playing one of the greatest games of all time on a $100 Linux gaming console. That's what I am. That's right. We're giving Mario Kart for the Wii a try on this little PC, and we'll see how it goes. Through the menus, we're getting good 60 frames per second, rendering it 720p, which is apparently twice the native resolution of the original Wii. So let's see how this goes. So far, really smooth. One of the cool things about this is you can hook up a Dolphin bar, and with some OEM Wii remotes, you can actually get Wii Sports and things like that working with the original Wii motion controls, which is just such a ton of fun for like party games and stuff like that. The Wii really was and is one of my favorite consoles of all time. So let's see how it performs in this emulator. We're locked in at 60 right now, and even with stuff happening, we're not really dipping below it. One thing to note is the capture card I've got doesn't quite grab everything at 60 frames per second. So while what you're looking at isn't super smooth, a little bit choppy, it's really nice on the actual monitor I'm playing on. So this I would call a massive success, even though I suck. So I gotta say, emulation on this device is a massive success. We're getting 60 frames per second, rendering it double the native resolution of GameCube and Wii, which personally I think are the best consoles to be emulating for party games and stuff anyways. This indicates to me that you'd probably be able to get PS2 working and maybe even original Xbox, though I haven't had the time to test those. There's a lot of potential in this replacing a lot of those retro Pis and things like that with like 4 to 6 times the performance. This is amazing. I don't have a lot of hope for running AAA titles or even anything based on the Unreal Engine, but I want to see how far we can push this thing. So I'm going to start things off with Rocket League, which is built on an older version of Unreal Engine, I think, and can go pretty high up there. Then we're going to test something like Elden Ring. Let's see what we can get. I don't think it's going to be very far. That's for sure. We're going to try out Rocket League, which is built on, I think, Unreal Engine 3 or 4. It's an older title, but it does look pretty good. Okay, I want you all to hear this. Almost knocked my monitor over. That's the sound of my mini PC's fan spinning up as it's churning through Vulkan shaders for Rocket League. It's not looking good, fellas. Unless... All right, and this time my controller works. It only took like 10 minutes to launch. All right, let's you know what, for the memes. For the memes, we'll try this at 1080p and see what happens. We are definitely not going to be running this at high quality though. Let's go ahead and do high performance. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh, that doesn't look good at all. And we're just in the menu. Let's see where it goes. Let's take a look at the settings here. We're running it at render quality quality. I don't I don't know why this is here when I could just select a different resolution, but okay. And then our render detail, we've got on performance, which is as low as possible. And surprisingly, we're getting 30 frames per second here. It's all right. I wouldn't say it's an optimal gaming experience. I wouldn't say you should run out and use this N100 mini PC as your competitive Rocket League climbing PC, but you can't say you can't play it. So that's something. Because Rocket League was such a glaring success, let's try Elden Ring. We're going to skip processing Vulkan shaders, because if I waited for that, we would be here another 10 minutes. If you give the N100 mini PC enough time, it will inevitably generate enough frames. So first thing we're going to do is check out system and go into, let's drop this to as low quality as possible. Yeah, nice. And then let's drop the resolution. Yes. Okay, cool. Now, we're gonna load up my girlfriend's Elden Ring save, because I'm not sullying my Elden Ring save with this level of performance. My heart can't take it. We're getting a solid 8 frames per second in the loading screen. So this is super promising, for sure. 2 frames. 2 frames. Oh. That's gaming, bro. That is gaming. 3 frames per second. Honestly, I think gamers these days are spoiled. And 6 frames per second should be plenty. Honestly, 720p, 6 frames per second, why isn't that enough for you, is the question. Yeah, Elden Ring is a wash. All right, so as expected, AAA titles not within the wheelhouse of this little guy. They launch, Rocket League was playable, although I don't know how many people would consider that a AAA title. Elden Ring was a no-go unless you're happy with slideshows. So I'm going to assume that Doom Eternal, Red Dead Redemption 2, those games, not even gonna launch. Not even with like a bunch of DLSS stuff or like upscaling, which by the way, we don't have access to because this is an integrated Intel GPU, not like a really mediocre NVIDIA graphics card. So that's off the table. However, our emulation tests were amazing, more than playable. I'm sure you could run 2 to 4 players on your console games, and your indie titles, right? Looking at Hades and Hades 2 coming up, Hollow Knight Silksong, comfort games like Stardew Valley and stuff like that, they're all going to run well within playable at 720p or even 1080p. I'm really happy with this. So there you have it. We've run this thing through the ringer. We went from indie games to emulators, all the way up to some AAA titles. And while we didn't get great performance on the AAA titles, the emulated games on GameCube and Wii were running at 60 frames per second, 1080p, or at least 720p. That's amazing. The fact that you could do Wii gaming on this makes this a no-brainer for party game consoles living in your living room. Not to mention, CachyOS's handheld gaming distribution makes turning this into a console a breeze. I didn't have to think about very much at all. EmuDeck took a little bit of config, but getting this thing working just with Steam games was super easy. I almost forgot I was on Linux. The best part is, you don't have to stop at one of these N100 mini PCs. You could install CachyOS Handheld or Bazite on whatever PC you want. So you could take your $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 gaming PC if you wanted, install Bazite or install CachyOS Handheld, and give yourself that console experience, but with 4K, HDR, 240 hertz refresh rate, all of that stuff packed in. This scales beautifully well, and I think it opens up the world to Linux gaming consoles as a new norm. So there you have it. If you like the experiment, if you're interested in more content like this, I'll be going down more rabbit holes with Linux gaming and all sorts of other stuff. So please like, comment, subscribe if you like the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.